All right. Welcome to the Project 19 link up on breath. I'm just going to go over some tech points right now before we get started. As I said before, we are recording this session and we will be posting it online later, so just know that. I also invite all of you, if you like, to put your Zoom on speaker view. If you go into the top right corner, you'll see that it toggles between speaker view and gallery view. If you put it on gallery view, you'll see everyone. And if you put it on speaker view, the person who is speaking, which will mostly be Melissa, will sort of pop up large. So it's your choice. I also want to draw your attention to the bottom taskbar. You can see in the center there is the chat function. If you click on that, the chat function will open up on the right side and you can put your sidebar comments into the chat function, as everyone is already doing. Say your hellos. And then we also invite you to put any questions that you may come up with for Melissa during the presentation into the chat function. Now, don't worry if she gets to a break and she's asking questions and you have a question and you haven't put it into the chat yet, you can use the raise your hand function. So right above the chat, you can click raise hand and a little raised yellow hand will come up on your picture and we can try and get to you that way for your question. And as you can tell, just want to let everybody know that you're all going to be muted, but we will unmute you when it's time for you to answer your question. So sometimes that takes a couple of seconds, so just give it a moment and we'll get to you as quickly as possible. So without further ado on that stuff, I'd like to introduce Project 19's guest speaker for today. Her name is Melissa Lowe. She is a third-generation skydiver who did her first jump in 1982 at the age of 5. Wow, not many of us can say that. She has completed over 11,000 skydives and has 23 world records and 10 US medals in freestyle, artistic free fly, and 10-way. She is often on the ground, she is often on the organizing scene for boogies, records, and events around the globe. Some of the younger crowd may not know this, but she was the co-creator of vertical formation skydiving, which we all know as VFS. She also co-organized the very first women's vertical world record. Not only is Melissa one of the most highly recognized names in skydiving, she also has many other talents. She is an entrepreneur, a private pilot, a paraglider pilot, an author, keynote speaker, yoga instructor, and most importantly, mother and wife. Melissa is the author of 2 books about her colorful drop zone family history. Her father, Roger Nelson, skydiving pioneer, DZO, and infamous drug smuggler, had begun to chronicle his life story, but due to his untimely death, he never completed the tale. Melissa, years later, picked up the dusty manuscripts and spent a decade researching and compiling the stories into 2 books titled Sugar Alpha and Charlie Bravo. Later, we'll put the links to those books in the chat. I personally remember learning to free fly about 20 years ago, probably around the year 2000, and visiting Skydive Chicago for the first time. Melissa, who is just a few years younger than myself, seemed to me to be the most talented and most color coordinated female free flyer I've ever seen. Since then, she has continued to inspire me over the years with her talent, passion, and many accomplishments. Here is Melissa Lowe, who will be speaking to you about the importance of breath in skydiving and life.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I forgot I've done a lot of stuff. What a reminder. And thank you so much. I'm inspired by you too, Sarah. Well, welcome everyone. Today we are going to dive into learning more about the breath. So you can just raise your hand in your screen. How many of you have heard you need to relax and breathe on this skydive? Nobody tells you to relax and breathe. How many times do coaches or instructors teach you all the mechanics of a skydive, but they don't teach you the mechanics of breathing or when to breathe or cueing you to breathe? Has anyone ever done that for you? maybe if you're, have a yoga instructor, skydiving instructor, but rarely in my skydiving career has anyone taught me more about breath. And I was really gravitated to learn more about the breath because as a coach and instructor, I would tell people what I was told, breathe and relax. But I wanted to know more about breath. And it drew me into yoga and pranayama, but I've gone to learn so much more about the breath. But here we are today, most of us on a world record journey. And we want to master leveling ourselves up in skydiving. And I really, truly believe with Shannon Pilcher's seminar and Dan BC's seminar and this seminar, they all complement each other in becoming that high level performing athlete and teammate. So just to elaborate a little bit more, I wasn't sure where Sarah was going with the introduction, but I am a third generation skydiver. On the left of the screen is my grandfather and my uncle Carl learning how to skydive when my grandfather got out of the World War in the early 70s. On the right is me growing up on the drop zone and a skydive I believe I made at the age of 8. And I made my first solo skydive at the age of 16, and my screen isn't working anymore. Oh, there we go. There I am. Oh, there I am. So that's me with my dad making my first solo jump at the age of 16. Even though I grew up on the drop zone and I'm a third generation, skydiving was not very natural to me. I did graduate AFF in a short period of time, but every time I leveled up in the sport, I would literally beat my head up against the wall, not understanding what others would get so naturally. When free flying came about and we were starting to mature the discipline and do big wave skydives, in the year 2000, a group of free flyers got together. And I put so much pressure on myself to perform because I was the only woman on the skydive. And it was at my dad's drop zone, so I wanted to make my dad proud. When we watch this video, when the camera flips over, I'll be on the right side with the black and white helmet and pink container. I was cut from that skydive and I went back to my trailer on the drop zone and I cried like a baby. And then I thought my friends would think I would look stupid crying in my trailer, so I went back and I offered to do video for the group. And shortly after, the first vertical world records were happening, and the first record I was also cut from. And I was devastated, and I drank a lot of margaritas. I used to drink back in the day. Amy, you're smiling because you were there. And what it did for me is it really helped me it shifted my perception of where I wanted to go in the sport. Instead of detouring me, I was motivated. So today, just like Sarah shared, I am now a professional skydiving athlete with over 11,000 skydives. I'm an AFF instructor with 23 world records. I'm on the highlight demo team. I've been involved with the vertical sequential world record since its inception, and I'm a vertical sequential world record organizer. On the flip side of that, I am also a yoga instructor. I also teach 200-hour yoga teacher trainings. I own a yoga studio and I'm a personal trainer. So the breath is very much my every part of my daily living. I am also the mother of a 4th generation skydiver. And talk about breathing. I don't think I breathed for 2 days. This is when he was 4 last year. I think I held my breath the entire time. And there we are in free fall together. That was a little bit of background, but let's dive right into it. I think knowing and understanding the anatomy of breath is really important so we can really utilize this tool. So how we breathe, every time we inhale, the breath enters the nose, the throat, and into our lungs. And the lungs and rib cage will expand three-dimensionally, and the diaphragm, which sits just below your rib cage, will engage to flatten. And the diaphragm is the main muscle of respiratory. When we exhale, the diaphragm relaxes to ascend and the lungs and rib cage compress, then the air releases out the throat and nose. There are so many benefits of breath. The first one is obviously the existence of life. But to condense this down, I put all the importance that relate to us as skydivers. And the first one is that when we breathe, it helps lower our stress. The breath is directly related to our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the fight and flight response. So let's talk a little bit more about stress. We know as a whole that leveling up our skydive wherever we are adds a certain level of stress. But we also add stress in different ways. So how can we manage this stress and what does this stress look like? I remember about 10,000 jumps in, I showed up to a world record event. I checked in at the office about an hour before we were meeting for the first briefing of the day. And my rig was out of date. And I realized when I went to pay for my jumps, I left my wallet at the hotel 20 minutes away. And by the end of the day, I lost my wedding ring. I was a hot mess that day. So even though that I have all this experience, you can still add in different levels of stress. This may seem very rudimentary on managing stress to help you be successful for your breath, but I'm going to go through it anyways. When you show up to an event, make sure that your rig is in date. And have a checklist of gear. I am notorious for showing up and all my batteries are not charged. So having your batteries charged for your altimeter, your audibles, your GoPro, make sure you have a memory card for your GoPro. I now have a checklist and I double check with my husband to go through this checklist to make sure I show up to an event and have everything that I need. And also making sure that you have layers of clothes, because sometimes when we jump in the morning, it's cold, in the middle of the afternoon, it's hot, and then it's cold again. So making sure that you set yourself up for success. Then arriving early to the drop zone. I know a lot of you have done this and doing all of the camps and such. When you arrive early, that just gives you a little bit of space to check in, maybe doing a jump and getting familiar with the drop zone and their house rules. I also like to go to the grocery store and get healthy snacks because drop zones are notorious for not having healthy fast food. So just setting yourself up. Let's see. And then when it comes time to the event, showing up on time for dirt dives and debriefs. I think it really sets a tone, especially when we are trying to be a team and work together, when you're showing up to dirt dives and debriefs late. So my dad had a saying, if you can't be on time, be early. And this leads me to the next one, hire a packer. Anytime I do these types of events, hiring a packer helps me have time to go to the bathroom, eat, and be on time for dirt dives and debriefs. But the last thing, it helps me conserve energy because I want to use that energy for the skydive. There's some other psychological stresses. Like I said, when that skydive, when I was very young in 2000, doing that first big way, and I got cut, I put all these pressures. I was the only girl. I wanted to show off. I wanted to impress my dad. I wanted to be cool. I put all these stresses on myself. And my expectations were way more than where my skill was. So just knowing and honoring wherever you are in your skydiving journey. And the next thing, whether you do or do not get on this next world record, just know that isn't the last world record. There are a lot of disciplines in the sport, and I really like to plant the seed, especially for the women's events, because every time we come to this event, we are training a whole new group of women, because a lot of women will train for this event and then they get out of the sport or we never see them again. But when we grow to larger events, we need you. We need you to come back to keep building this team. So I like to plant that seed to continue on with your skydiving journey. And remembering to find the fun, the reason that we skydive in the first place. And it's really easy to forget what we do here, even if it's a bad skydive, like what an amazing opportunity. I feel like with COVID, it really puts that in perspective, that I did an interview with someone and they said, the next time I skydive, I know it's going to feel so much sweeter because I'm going to appreciate it so much more. So it's just coming back to that and remembering why we skydive. All right, back to the benefits. So we lower our stress, but it also helps us improve our core stability. No matter what discipline you fly, the foundation of skydiving revolves around your core. And we'll practice that with a few of the breath techniques. It also helps increase our psychological and physical resilience and cognitive function. Do you guys remember your first skydive? How did you feel? Were you freaked out? Or were you super casual? I was freaking out. When I did my first solo jump, I was literally holding onto the plane, gripping onto it, thinking, I don't have to do this because my dad does this. But somehow I passed that threshold and got to the other side. And I have done it over and over and over again, just like you. So we build up this tolerance, and the breath helps us achieve that as well. And also the benefit of expending less energy. Well, we need to conserve a lot of energy, especially when we go up to higher altitudes and we deal with hypoxia. And also when we have long days, we're doing bursts of energy and then the energy level comes down, the breath can kind of help us be a little bit more even keel. Okay, we're gonna get into these breath techniques, but they come with some warning labels. If you just ate, you might feel a little heartburn, so just be mindful of that. If you ever feel dizzy or lightheaded, just go back to your normal breath. And if you have asthma or you're prone to anxiety or panic attacks, just set your space up so you can manage that. All right, are you guys ready to get into it? Okay, so this is interactive. So if you're holding a phone or you want to be able to have your hands free. And this first one is called a belly breath or the diaphragmatic breath. And it's known as belly breathing. It doesn't mean you're actually breathing from your belly, but rather allowing the belly to move freely with your breath. This helps us with the core stability. It strengthens the diaphragm, and it helps build our tolerance to high intensity exercise. There was a time when I wore a heart rate monitor for a skydive during the 69 way or the 108 way. And when I was boarding the airplane, my heart rate was about 88 beats per minute, which is a little higher. So it's like a moderate exercise level, just walking onto the plane. And then I was able to calm that heart rate down, totally focused on it the whole ride to altitude. And I got it down to 68 beats per minute. And then when the 2-minute call came, my heart rate went to 111. And once I settled into 2 minutes, got ready, the benches were up, I was able to get my heart rate back down. When the door opened, my heart rate jumped up to 128. And then the next time I was able to look at the heart rate monitors when I opened up under canopy, and I was at 164 beats per minute. So being able to manage that stress level in an intense situation, you can do that using the breath, and the belly breath helps you build that tolerance of those peak performance moments. Okay, I'm gonna demonstrate for you really quick, and don't mind me, but for the belly breath, You want to put one hand over your chest and one hand on your belly. But I'm going to leave my hand off so you can see. When you breathe, you want to let your belly get fat. So inhale, fatten out the belly as if you're filling up a balloon, and then fill up the top lobes of the lungs. And then exhale, decompress from the chest, and then start bringing the navel in to really expel that breath. Inhale, balloon out. Then exhale, bringing that navel all the way in. Okay. So let's do that a couple of rounds just to build in the muscle memory. So you can sit at your chair, sitting up nice and tall, making sure that your knees are wide so your belly has space. And this is a moment I'm going to give you permission, because in our everyday life, we're told to be skinny. We wear super tight jumpsuits. So I want you to be comfortable with letting your belly get super fat when you inhale, and then really drawing it in when you exhale. So let's inhale together. And then exhale. Navel comes all the way into the spine. Then one more time, inhale. And then exhale. Awesome. You can return to your normal breath. So it's so amazing that this breath is so simple and has so many benefits. But we don't realize, researchers say that we only use 10 to 20% of our maximum lung capacity. It's because we breathe up in the chest and we don't allow that belly to fill up and let the oxygen through. So this is the one where this is the breath that I would suggest to use on the ride to altitude or when you're in free fall. The next breath is called the Ujjayi breath. This is a yogic breath, and Ujjayi is Sanskrit for victorious breath. This one is both energizing and calming, and it also tones the lungs, and it warms up our body. This is great, especially when we're in a super hot environment in jumpsuits, dirt diving in the sun, and then we get into the plane, get up to altitude, and the temperatures change. This will help warm up the muscles, and this is a great one to use in the ride to altitude. So the difference on this one, I'm gonna put the mic in so you can hear me, because it's also an audible breath. Thumbs up if you can still hear me. Yeah, okay, good. So it's the same thing. We're gonna start with the setup with the belly breath. So you can go ahead and join me, one hand over your heart, one hand over your belly. So this way we can really feel the breath. So as you inhale, fill up the belly. And then exhale, just reverse. So we're just building in the rhythm. Then the navel comes to spine. Keep this rhythm, breathing on your own breath. And in just a moment, we'll sync up and I'll count the breath. So we'll sync up. Inhale, we'll count to 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Navel in. Inhale, fill up. 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, keep that rhythm, keep going. We're going to add in some other elements of this breath. We want to make sure when we get to the top and the bottom of the breath, we're not holding the breath, but it's as if we're floating the breath up and then smoothly transitioning it down. So let's sing up. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Stay with this breath. I'm going to stop counting. Inhale. This time when we get to the top of the exhale, I want you to be super loud and proud. Open your mouth and let it go, keeping that count of 5. Exhale. Nice. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, let it out. Nice. Inhale, 2. This time when you get to the top of the breath, seal your lips, but keep your ha sound. Inhale, 2. Did you guys hear that? So it's breathing in the back of your throat as if you have a straw in the back of your throat. Whenever you're ready, do that exhale, breathing into the back of the throat. Some people say it sounds like a hissing sound. Some people say it sounds like the waves of the ocean. And some people say it's like the Darth Vader breath. Okay, on your next inhale, see if you can whisper, mmm. So now where the inhales and exhales are in the back of the throat. Nice, okay. You guys can go back to your normal breath. And do you guys have any comments or questions about either of those 2 breaths?
Melissa, we've got a question from Amy Shimalecki.
All right.
Amy, I'm unmuting you, or are you going to mute yourself? Okay.
Hi guys. Mr. The first breath, do you have any tips for, I'm either like collapsing in my lower back and it hurts, or I'm like this with my shoulders. It's hard for me. It's like, it's painful a little bit, but if you have any tips for that, it'd be awesome.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have this tendency when they breathe in and they bring the shoulders up with it. The other thing that happens is people will start to like feel like they need to flare out their chest. So we need to make sure that you stay long with the head, with the chin tucked in slightly, and then tuck the tailbone in, and then allow your shoulders just to soften. And a lot of people will force the breath instead of just letting it feel natural. So you almost want to just find that natural, and that's why I like hand over my heart, hand over my belly, because it doesn't take much effort. So I think when people like really try, you can find yourself more stressed than a relaxed position. I don't know if that helped. Yeah.
It does. It makes sense.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Melissa on this section? If you do, just use the raise your hand function or hold your hand up in the video and we'll try and find you. All right, let's go ahead and continue on then, Melissa.
Okay, so the Ujjayi breath would be good if you do warm-up stretches before the day. So when you're moving around, it helps bring warmth to the muscles. And it's also good during the ride to altitude. I haven't really heard, and I don't really use this breath personally in free fall. I really prefer the belly breath in free fall. Okay, so this next one is called bellows breath. And this one, there's a couple of factors to think in this one. The bellows breath is a really sharp inhale and exhale. An inhale and an exhale is considered 1 round, and it will be 2 rounds. I'm sorry, it will do 10 rounds of this breath. Can you guys see the screen? Yeah, okay. So 10 rounds. We'll do a sharp inhale, exhale. That's 1, and then we'll go all the way to 10. When you get to the 11th inhale, you'll inhale as much as you can, and then hold your breath as long as you can, and then exhale slowly. And then you'll just kind of sit with that. So I'll demonstrate first. I'm going to put the mic back in. Okay, mic check. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, just a heads up, we're unmuting everyone. So
I'm going to sit up nice and tall. This breath is coming from the solar plexus area right here. So you can have your hand right underneath, like where your chest strap would go. And I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1.
What am I doing?
And then letting it out slowly. And then returning to the normal breath. Okay, so Amy's going to unmute everybody. I want to hear everyone breathing, and you'll use the chart to manage where you are in the breath cycle. When you get to the 11th breath, you'll inhale, hold it, and then exhale slow. Is everyone ready? All right. Doing this together, you can put your hand either on your knees or just onto the solar plexus. In 3, 2, 1, breathe.
You passed.
Inhale, hold it. Hold it as long as you can. Hold it. And then let it go slowly, 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 slowly. And return to your normal breath. Okay, in the chat section, just write how you feel. Some people feel elated. I kind of feel a tingling sensation. All right, Amy, you can mute everyone. And then if you guys can share with me how you felt doing that breath if you practice with us.
Oh my God, Sarah and I keep muting and unmuting at the same time.
I wasn't doing anything.
Okay, we're good. I feel lightheaded and out of breath. Boom. Okay.
Okay, so all of these breaths will require training, but we'll talk about that. Lightheaded is very normal because what's happening with the bellows breath is that we are pushing a lot of fresh oxygen into the bloodstream. So we're sending fresh oxygen and nutrients, and it regenerates all of our cells and it rebuilds our immune system. So it's a super powerful breath. So when to do this breath, I think is also equally important. When we go up for the skydive, I feel that we need to keep a more mellow, even keel energy. Since this one, we call this one yoga coffee, I personally don't want to get super amped up before the job. I want to be super calm and focused, keep my energy level focused. However, when we do world records, what happens is we go up on the skydive, we level out, and then we go on the skydive and we peak our energy, and then the energy level starts to come down. And when we wait on the ground for an hour or so before the next call, the energy can go down super low. So if you have a benchmark here, when you feel that energy kind of dipping, this is when you want to do a breath like that. And doing one round is great practice to start. But once you feel acclimated to doing one round, that whole session, you can do it up to 10 times if you want to. But again, if you ever feel lightheaded or if it doesn't feel good, then you don't have to do it. Or if you're not practicing now, we are recording this session. You can always go back to one of these breaths to practice again. Any questions on that breath?
I don't think we have any questions on that breath.
Okay. So the next one is called the pressure breathing. Pressure breathing helps us combat hypoxia. So basically, pressure breathing is a belly breath with a forced exhale. It helps us to improve the gas exchange across the alveoli, increasing the pressure in the lungs. So it tricks our lungs to think that we're closer to sea level altitude. And this one obviously helps us combat hypoxia. It removes more carbon dioxide from the lungs, and it increases an athlete's performance. So the pressure breathing, I would suggest to use anytime you feel the effects of hypoxia. But I also, in my own head, called this the floater's breath. Because if you are if you are hanging outside of the airplane, you are usually breathing less on the oxygen than you are if you're a diver. Because you're pretty much, if you're a diver, you can breathe on that oxygen tube that whole entire time until you leave the airplane. So this is the floater's breath, otherwise known as pressure breathing. This is super not flattering, but For the sake of demonstration, I'm going to get close to the camera and turn my mic back on. Okay, everyone can still hear me? Good, perfect. So belly breath, breathing into the belly. When you get to the top of your breath, pierce your lips and then press the air out. And then inhale, belly breath. Exhale, pierce your lips, push out the air. Awesome. Good. That was super simple as well. I feel the effects of hypoxia even breathing on oxygen. So I use this from the 2-minute call, even if I'm a diver, all the way until leaving the airplane. Any questions on the pressure breath?
No question.
I have a question. Sorry.
Oh, Amy's got a question.
Melissa, would you suggest doing that unpracticed I'm curious, like even that I got a little lightheaded. So I was like, maybe I shouldn't do that for the first time at, 18,000 feet hanging outside the plane.
Absolutely.
Your
And
thoughts on that?
Yep, and that brings me into the next session of the presentation. So if no one else has any questions, I'll just jump right into it. No other questions? Well, I'm just going to rock and roll then. All right. So now we have these tools, and like Amy said, we want to think of ourselves more like marathon runners. We're not going to show up to the event, show up to a marathon and run our first 26 miles that day of the event. There's a lot of training that you have to do to set yourself up for winning and doing well. And for us, we have being a high-performing teammate, we have visualization, and we can also use the breath. So psychologists have a thing called pair by association. And basically what that is, it's associating a stimulus with an arbitrary object or item and eliciting a response and doing it repetitively. So this is us training. Every time you tie your shoes, do a belly breath. Anytime you open your door to your house, the door to your car, a door of an airplane, do a ujjayi breath. I don't know. But you want to pick things like you see a green light at a stoplight that turns green, someone wearing green light of the door, or if you do a certain ritual on the plane, or when you visualize, you want to set yourself up to make that more of a habit. So it's not something you're showing up to and doing the day of. So just like when you're exercising, right? I don't know, I think I don't stretch the morning before a world record because I know I've already done all the training to prep for that world record. So I want you to get in a notebook or get your smartphone out, and I want you to think of 2 things that you do every day in your everyday life and pair that with the breath you want to practice that you think would be most useful to you in your world record skydiving. So go ahead, write those down now. I see some of you writing. And the trick is remembering to do this, right? It's the trick of remembering when we let go of the airplane, remembering those little tips that we want to do and perform in that skydive. Okay, I'll give everyone 1 more minute. This next video is from a presentation I did talking to moms in skydiving, because I can't speak for everyone, but I know for myself that I have this mental dialogue that happens in my head. And when I was really new, especially with world records, and ever since I became a mom, I have this new dialogue that happens. And there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of doubt and a lot of questioning about why am I doing this? And then how do I conquer that? So this is what I said. And thumbs up if you can.
Someone asked me, well, okay, you say you're going to be okay, and you conquer your thoughts. Like, what is that piece that helps you connect the dots to conquer the self-doubt and worry in your mind and the what if roller coaster? And it's seriously, for me, what works is so incredibly simple, it's going to seem too easy, is that I really close my eyes and I take a deep breath. I visualize the skydive, a perfect skydive. And I don't let anything around me disrupt that vision. And it's as simple as that.
So if you haven't seen Dan BC's visualization seminar, I highly suggest that you do that, because these two seminars, I feel they really complement each other. So let's elaborate on that. I invite you to be a floater on the 164 way. Are you ready? In 3 words or less, I want you to share in the chat box what you just felt. Yes. Did anyone notice their breathing patterns? Was anybody holding their breath at all? Or maybe holding themselves like this? Oh, I love these answers. This is awesome. Yay! All right, well, we're going to watch that video one more time, but as we watch it, I'm going to cue you to breathe. So right now, I want you to have in your mind what breath you want to do. And we're going to do that skydive again. We're on jump run. Take a breath. Breathe. 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 Awesome. Did anyone feel any difference from watching that from the first time to the second time? Write in the chat box. Nobody felt anything. All right, here we go. Here we go. Yes, awesome. Yes. I noticed more. I felt more conscious of my body, calmer. Paul was there. More regular with my breathing. Good. Okay. I don't know if you noticed on that skydive, but that whole formation was silhouetted. And I had to wait for someone to get to their slot to get to my slot. And I don't know, it's really hard to see because it's a little bit older footage, but someone in the base is shaking their head no when everyone was shaking their head yes, because that person was signifying that one person or a group was not docked, and that was me and the person behind me waiting to build. And I had already built in the tools to breathe and focus so I didn't freak out and flail. We are going to do that one more time, but I'm going to build in one more layer. I'm going to add on to Dan BC's, when you paint that picture, when you visualize to your skydive, I'm going to add in an audible section of that, because that helps keep me focused on the skydive and remembering what I need to do, so I don't get into my head of, oh my God, where's the base? I can't see the base. The sun's on my eyes. Like, I completely remove that dialogue out and I exit. Where's the base? Where's my line? Fly on in, and then I cue it with the breath. So I've had some students tell me that they create a mantra for themselves. I have some students tell me they sing. But I'm going to share, I do a checklist. So I'm going to share that with you. So hopefully you can find something that works for you. And we'll watch that one more time with different cues. Green light, breathe. Oops. Oh, wrong one. Green light, breathe. Exit. Find the base. Breathe. Aim under the base. Breathe. Find the line, fly on in. Breathe. Breathe. Levels. Slot. Breathe. Dock. Breathe. Breathe. Yay. All right, share with me in the chat box how that one was for you, and or how it helped, or did it change something or help you know what you need to help visualize. Nice. Less distracted, more aware, calm, more conscious. I love it. Great. Gave more order to thoughts. Yes. Helped form the visual picture. Yes. Focused. I love it. Calm and focused. Great. So hopefully we can start connecting the dots of all these tools that you've been learning over the last few weeks. This is stuff we talk about on the ground all the time, but rarely do we put into practice. It's almost like we assume that you're putting in the practice behind the scenes, but here's such a great opportunity that we can put all these together. So before we close out, I just have one quote I want to share with you about the breath. It's my favorite quote. A long and subtle breath establishes a calm mind. A calm mind is the foundation for everything great. Yay. All right. We'll open it up for questions and comments.
Okay, guys, if you have any questions, you can either type them into the chat or just use the raise your hand function that's above the chat, and I'll scroll through the names and see if anybody's got a question. Oh, we've got a question from Veronica. I'm going to unmute her. Veronica, can you talk?
Yeah, can you guys?
Awesome. We hear you.
Okay, perfect. So one thing that I've heard before, and it helps me only when I remember to do this, but when I exit the airplane and I exhale, I actually find that my whole skydive goes better. Do you guys ever do that? Or do you ever feel anything from that? like specifically like that exhale. I don't know if I remember how to do it. It literally changes my skydive.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed, but when I did that video, when I closed my eyes in the background of the skydive, because that's exactly what I do, is right when I exit and I give it an exhale through the mouth, it just sets the tone for the entire skydive. But I have built that into my visualization, so I do it every single time. But yes, absolutely.
We've also got a question from Brianna Baker.
Hey there, I was just wondering if we could get a cheat sheet for the types of breathing we did. Like I've done the ujjayi and the belly breath, but the other ones I'm not too familiar with, and I would just like to have a list of them so I can practice them if that's possible.
Yeah, sure. I can send them to Amy. Amy, you do a recap after, so we can definitely do that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can post them on the Broken Records website below the recording of this link up. So that's a great suggestion, Bree. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? You can use the raise your hand. Oh, we got Dan BC in the house. Okay. Well, we don't have any more questions. So do you have anything? Oh, wait, no, we got a question. Let's see. Vanessa, I'm going to unmute you. Vanessa.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. Melissa, I'm a little bit confused about the pressure breath. Is the air is coming out your nose?
No,
You're like, okay.
Yeah, out of your mouth. So basically you pierce your lips and you force the breath out of your mouth. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to practice that one some more.
It's a good one. Yay. Well, you guys can unmute yourself if you want to say anything before we close out.
Just
right.
one thing I'd like to tell everyone before we close out is the next link up is with Luke Akins, and the title of it is Impossible Says Who. So if you guys know, if any of you guys know who Luke Akins is, you'll understand that. If not, just check it out on brokenrecords.world. You can read a little bit of information about him. He's going to relate a few of the massive projects he's done to our initiative. Also before we close out, I just would like to thank the WSN for their ongoing support in all these projects. And Melissa, thank you so much for teaching us that.
Yay, thank you.
I'm going to unmute everyone for a big old
thank you. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you. That was awesome.
That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.